Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our meeting. We will begin with a roll call and then proceed through the agenda.
Bloom?
Here.
Gordon?
Here.
Obernolte?
Here.
Patterson?
Here.
Williams?
Here.
Everybody's here. We've established a quorum. We only have vote-only calendar today, and we'll proceed item by item. Our first issue with a multitude of departments is the Emergency Drought Response Funding and Trailer Bill. My understanding is that there's been a request to take two votes on that. The staff recommendation is to reduce the Proposition 1 local assistance appropriation for groundwater contamination and by $1 million in order to continue the conversation in the conference committee on each of the allocations and to approve the remaining May revision proposals intact with budget bill language and SRL that's outlined in the staff report. There's also placeholder trailer bill language that provides the tools to assist state and local water entities with the ongoing management of the trout that is part of the recommendation. So the request has been that there be a vote on everything but the placeholder trailer bill language and then a separate vote on just the trailer bill language.
I'll move everything but the trailer bill language.
And the vote is?
Bloom?
Aye.
Gordon?
Aye.
Obernolte?
Aye.
Patterson?
Aye.
Williams?
Aye.
It's 5-0.
Now the trailer bill language. Is there a motion?
I'll move the trailer bill language.
I'll second that.
Bloom?
Aye.
Gordon?
Aye.
Obernolte?
No.
Patterson?
No.
Williams?
Aye.
That's 3-2.
Next we have issue number 2 under California Conservation Corps, Department of Forestry and Fire Protection, the expansion of residential program and reopening the Magalia Conservation Camp.
I'll move the item. Second.
Let's vote.
Bloom?
Aye.
Gordon?
Aye.
Obernolte?
Aye.
Patterson? Williams?
Aye.
It's 5-0.
Thank you. Moving on to issue number 3 under the California Energy Commission, Federal Fund Expenditure Authority for ARA third-party funds, the Recovery Act third-party funds.
I'll move the item.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second.
Bloom?
Aye.
Gordon?
Aye.
Obernolte?
Aye.
Patterson?
Aye.
Williams?
Aye.
It's 5-0.
Issue number 4 is New Solar Homes Partnership trailer bill language.
I'll move the New Solar Homes Partnership trailer bill language.
I'll second that.
Bloom?
Aye.
Gordon?
Aye.
Obernolte?
No.
Patterson?
No.
Williams?
Aye.
That's 3-2.
Under the Department of Conservation, we have issue number 5, Oil and Gas Data Management System. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Bloom?
Aye.
Gordon?
Aye.
Obernolte?
Aye.
Patterson? Williams?
Aye.
It's 5-0.
Thank you. Our next issue is, again, under Department of Conservation, the Underground Injection Control Program. And there's been some controversy on this item that relates, at least in part, to the Senate Subcommittee's action yesterday to shift the 23 positions to the Water Board. I want to just make a couple of comments about that, and then if others would like to make comments, we'll certainly hear those as well. We considered that option here, but decided that such a shift shouldn't be done without a little more careful consideration and more information. The central issue is ensuring that we have enough staff resources with the right expertise that's in place to get this well exemption issue resolved in such a fashion that it meets the U.S. EPA's compliance plan. Approving the positions at Dogger as proposed by the administration allows us to continue this conversation about this overall issue before and into the conference committee. It's really, I think, a very important issue, and it deserves more discussion. It's also my understanding that the Senate subcommittee adopted trailer bill language surrounding the issue, and I look forward to being able to evaluate those proposals as well in the conference committee. Dogger's track record, from my perspective, has not been great. Maybe that's an understatement. Certainly for some in the community, that would be an understatement. But I'm encouraged by the approach that's being taken by the new oil and gas supervisor, and really want to give him a chance and provide him with the tools to be successful, while also holding the division fully accountable, as is our responsibility. I'm also concerned that we not confer responsibilities on the Water Board that may create structural issues in both Dogger and the Water Board. So we just need to be really conscientious and careful about how we address this issue. I think our goals, from those that I've heard from, and I've heard from quite a few people about this issue, are the same, and that is fixing the well exemption issue to ensure the safety of our groundwater. With that, are there any other comments? Mr. Williams?
I do.
I'll second that. We'll continue with the discussion.
I just wanted to ask one question. So essentially, you're saying that you are open to making changes, but you want to hear from both departments about how or when and what the ramifications would be of doing a move. And for now, we would be moving to conference. The assembly position being, let's not make changes, but we could have a hearing here while it is in conference. Is that what we'd be doing?
I wasn't planning a hearing.
Or at least conversations we could have in our office.
I think, yes. I think conversations will take place on this. There's no question about that leading into the conference committee hearings. And as for where I am personally, I think I laid it out in the statement. I haven't conclusively determined where I am on the issue. I would say I'm leaning towards the administration's proposal, but I think there may be a number of options that we can take to ensure that the goals that we want to achieve are actually met.
Well, I think I could support that today. I think the bigger issue, and I know a little bit more about this because I'm doing a bill on it, and because many of these wells are in my district. But the issue of oversight is that, of course, that we need some increased oversight, not just from Dogger. Dogger has sort of proven itself to be unable to do this alone, and actually they're not even supposed to be doing it alone. They're supposed to have sign-off that was never done by the Water Board. So I think I can support that today. I just hope that we can continue the discussion about it, because I do think that authorizing thousands of wells, some of which may have been connected to beneficial use water, would be really tragic in the middle of the drought, and tragic if we do not prevent that from happening in the future.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, then I think we're ready to vote on this issue.
Bloom.
Aye.
Gordon.
Aye.
Obernolte.
Aye.
Patterson.
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
It's 5-0.
Thank you. Issue number 7, under Department of Forestry and Fire Protection, we have the illegal fireworks disposal issue.
Move the staff recommendation. Second.
Vote.
Bloom.
Aye.
Gordon.
Aye.
Obernolte.
Aye.
Patterson.
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
It's 5-0.
Under the University of California, issue 8, the stranding of sea lion pups and local grants.
Well, that's too cute not to. That's too cute not to move. So.
Second.
Let's have a roll call.
Bloom.
Aye.
Gordon.
Aye.
Obernolte.
Aye.
Patterson.
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
5-0.
Thank you. Department of Fish and Wildlife, we'll see if salmon are considered just as cute. We have issue number 9.
Maybe not as cute, but even more important for the future of the state. I'll move the recommendation.
Second.
All right, let's have a roll call.
Bloom.
Aye.
Gordon.
Aye.
Obernolte. Patterson. Williams.
Aye.
It's 5-0.
Thank you. Native American Heritage Commission, Issue 10, the implementation of new California Environmental Quality Act requirements and repatriation of Native American remains and cultural items, trailer bill language.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Bloom.
Aye.
Gordon.
Aye.
Obernolte.
Aye.
Patterson. Williams.
Aye.
It's 5-0.
Thank you. State Water Resources Control Board, Issue 11, Bay Delta Water Quality Control Plan Update and Implementation. Is there a motion?
I'll move staff recommendation of approving $7.8 million for the May revision.
Second.
A roll call, please.
Bloom.
Aye.
Gordon.
Aye.
Obernolte.
Aye.
Patterson.
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
It's 5-0.
Now we have under Department of Toxic Substances Control, Issue 12, the Enhanced Enforcement Initiative.
I'll move the Enhanced Enforcement Initiative.
Second.
It includes trailer bill language.
Okay. Bloom.
Aye.
Gordon.
Aye.
Obernolte.
No.
Patterson. Williams.
Aye.
It's 3-2.
Thank you. Issue 13, Hazardous Waste Enforcement Program Improvements.
I'll move the item.
Second.
A roll call, please.
Bloom.
Aye.
Gordon.
Aye.
Obernolte.
Aye.
Patterson.
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
It's 5-0.
Issue 14, Safer Consumer Products Priority Work Plan.
I'll move item 14.
I'll second that.
Bloom.
Aye.
Gordon.
Aye.
Obernolte.
No.
Patterson.
No.
Williams.
Aye.
That's 3-2.
Issue 15, Position Funding Realignment.
Move the item.
Second.
Bloom.
Aye.
Gordon.
Aye.
Obernolte.
No.
Patterson.
No.
Williams.
Aye.
That's 3-2.
Issue 16, Expedited Remedial Action Program.
Move the May revision proposal in item 16.
Second.
Bloom.
Aye.
Gordon.
Aye.
Obernolte.
No.
Patterson.
No.
Williams.
Aye.
That's 3-2.
Moving on to the Public Utilities Commission, we start with Issue 17, Net Energy Metering on Military Bases Trailer Bill Language.
I'll move the item. Second.
Roll call.
Bloom.
Aye.
Gordon.
Aye.
Obernolte.
Aye.
Patterson.
No.
Williams.
Aye.
Issue 18 is implementing GHG revenue study on energy-intensive trade-exposed industries. Mr. Patterson, did you want to be heard?
Yes, I would like to, and thank you, Mr. Chair, for adding this issue at my request and at the request of some who see this as a good policy. But I would like to note that my ask only included part of the governor's proposal last year, specifically the appropriation of $500,000 of cap and trade revenues to enable the CPUC to engage with a firm to conduct a comprehensive study of industries put at significant leakage risk due to higher electricity costs caused by cap and trade. Committee staff noted that this activity is more in the purview of the ARB and not the PUC, and I would concur with that. So I would like to make an alternative motion for a one-time $500,000 appropriation to enable the ARB to conduct that study.
I'll second the motion.
And noting that the alternative you're moving is differs from the staff recommendation, which is no action.
Yeah, and it narrows the staff's piece of the governor's proposal to the ARB $500,000 one time.
And what is the funding source that?
Cap and trade.
I see.
Have you,
Mr. Williams?
Question: Have you done any legal analysis on this? I mean, every bit of the cap and trade funds are supposed to have a GHG reduction. Otherwise, it is not a fee but a tax. So what is the GHG reduction
Nexus.
nexus with the study? I'm not saying the study isn't a good idea. The study's, I think, probably a good idea. But what is the nexus? And I know that's something that you guys care a lot about, is nexus between the fee and the use. But what's the nexus there? How does that reduce GHGs?
Well, first of all, the governor initiated it and suggested it. I'm assuming that when he did, he appropriately understood a connection there. If the GHG connection is tenuous, I would be willing to accept a general fund allocation. But what I was trying to do was to replicate that portion of the governor's recommendation and mirror it. And so if there is difficulty with the cap and trade usage, then perhaps a general fund would be appropriate. But I think the governor suggested this. It had, I think, some good vetting by the governor. The costs by the cap and trade does create leakage. If it does, we ought to size it and understand it, not merely ignore it or turn our back on it. So I'm more concerned about the study than the source of funding. So I would defer to the committee if there was a preference.
Let me suggest, Mr. Gordon, did you have a comment you wanted to add? And just to inform perhaps what your comments were going to be, I'm going to suggest that we hold this open to the end of the meeting to allow staff to ask a couple of questions, and maybe that's going to help inform the whatever decision we might make. So.
I was actually going to ask if we could do that.
Perfect.
Because I'd like to get my staff to do a quick check. And the final item is going to be cap and trade. So if we take this up after we have the cap and trade discussion.
Good. And also it would give us an opportunity then to for our staff to take a look at it as well, but also to inquire of CMTA and others who have requested this and have made some fairly good cases for it. And so we're going to go, we'll go back, we'll have some answers when we take it up.
Right.
Appreciate that.
Great. So we'll hold this open for the moment till the end of the meeting and move now to the Secretary of Natural Resources, Issue 19, Expansion of Timber Regulation and Forest Restoration Program.
Move the item.
Second.
Let's have a roll call.
Bloom.
Aye.
Gordon.
Aye.
Obernolte.
Aye.
Patterson.
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
It's 5-0.
We have a number of issues under Caltrans, starting with 20, Capital Outlay Support Provisional Language.
Move the item.
Second.
Bloom.
Aye.
Gordon.
Aye.
Obernolte.
No.
Patterson.
No.
Williams. That's 3-2.
Issue 21 is fish passages. Easy for you to say.
Move the item.
Second.
Bloom.
Aye.
Gordon.
Aye.
Obernolte.
No.
Patterson.
No.
Williams. It's 3-2.
Issue 22. Please send me emails if I say this incorrectly. The Walurga Park Soundwall.
Forestry folks.
22. It's the Walurga Park Soundwall. Or the Walurga.
Oh, okay. Well, all right. I will move the park sound wall.
Nicely done. I'll second that.
Bloom.
Aye.
Gordon.
Aye.
Obernolte.
No.
Patterson.
No.
Williams. It's 3-2.
Issue 23, Tower Bridge Relinquishment.
They wanted to get a study information. Yeah.
Tower Bridge. I'll move the item.
For the sake of our Sacramentans here, I will second that item.
Roll call, please.
Bloom.
Aye.
Gordon. Obernolte.
No.
Patterson.
No.
Williams.
Aye.
It's 3-2.
Issue 24, intercity rail reporting.
Second.
Bloom.
Aye.
Gordon. Obernolte.
Aye.
Patterson.
Not voting.
Williams. 4-1.
Number 25 is the pre-Proposition 42 debts.
I'll move the item.
Second.
Bloom.
Aye.
Gordon. Obernolte.
Aye.
Patterson.
Aye.
Williams. 5-0.
Issue 26, Caltrans May revisions proposals.
Neither of us are in the 710, but I will move the proposal on the 710.
Second. Roll call, please.
Bloom.
Aye.
Gordon. Obernolte.
Aye.
Patterson.
So which one is this?
26.
26?
It's on the 17.
26?
Yes.
No.
Williams.
Aye.
It's 26.
Make a second motion on this. Can you move this back? Because they think you split the motions. Can you move this part out?
Okay.
I did not. We can.
If you guys,
4-1. Okay.
do you believe that we split that motion, or that was one whole motion?
26?
Yeah.
I don't think we split it.
Okay. Good.
Nobody's requesting a split motion? Okay. Then that includes all the recommendations. Issue number 27, relating to the green sticker cap program, raising that cap.
Move raising this green sticker cap.
Second. Vote, please.
Bloom.
Aye.
Gordon.
Aye.
Obernolte.
No.
Patterson.
No.
Williams.
Aye.
It's 3-2.
And issue 28, under Board of Pilot Commissioners, the rate increases, issue number 28. Yes.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Members, this item increases rates, but it has not been examined by this committee before. Going through the budget process seems to me to deviate from the historical manner in which rate increases have been considered by the legislature. So I would like to hear input from the Pacific Merchant Shipping Association, who has stated opposition. They would like to be afforded the opportunity to make their case prior to our vote.
All right. Are there any other comments on that issue? Is there a motion?
I'm trying to understand the process and procedure here.
I'm sorry. Are you making a request? To,
I'm making a request. They are
I
here.
misunderstood.
I'm sorry. They are here, and I believe before we vote, we ought to give them an opportunity to comment since they had not had an opportunity prior.
Okay, so then procedurally, we'd be
Do I
pulling
need-
that off a vote only and having a hearing. Does that require a vote, or? All right, then we will just pull
Appreciate
that
that,
off at your
Mr. Chairman. Thank
request,
you.
and we'll
Thank you.
hear that after we conclude the remaining items. Pardon me. Now, under Board of Pilot Commissioners, we also have the issue number 29 regarding the pilot fatigue study.
I'll move the pilot fatigue study.
All right, Mr. Gordon seconds, and we'll have a roll call vote.
Bloom.
Aye.
Gordon.
Aye.
Obernolte.
Aye.
Patterson. Williams.
Aye.
It's 5-0.
Thank you. Under High Speed Rail Authority, we have issue number 30, High Speed Rail reporting.
I'll move item 30.
Second.
Vote, please.
Bloom.
Aye.
Gordon,
Aye.
Obernolte,
Aye.
Patterson, Williams.
Aye.
It's 4-1.
And the Franchise Tax Board, issue number 31, trailer bill related to toll collections.
I'll move the item.
Second.
Let's vote.
Bloom,
Aye.
Gordon,
Aye.
Obernolte,
Aye.
Patterson.
This is 31?
30.
Yes.
31.
31.
Sorry, 31. Williams.
Aye.
It's 5-0.
All right, that takes us through the vote-only calendar. We now have two items to be heard, and then we will return to issue 18 on the vote-only calendar. Our first issue to be heard is the Assembly Cap and Trade Plan.
So this is
Welcome back.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Almy, please
Thank you.
proceed.
Matt Almy, Department of Finance. We had heard the administration's May revision cap and trade proposal earlier this week. So if it is okay with the chair, I'll just like to make a few comments on the Assembly's staff recommendation.
Please do.
Yeah. So we appreciate the subcommittee's approval of the administration's cap and trade May revision plan. In terms of the additional augmentations, as this issue has further discussions in the conference committee, the administration will be evaluating the cap and trade package with the following filters. First is revenues. Second is reasonableness of revenues, a conservative approach. Second filter would be just to confirm that the expenditures further the purpose of AB 32 by reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and whether the package as a whole would enable the administration to meet the disadvantaged community requirements of SB 535. So in terms of the revenues, as the staff agenda references, there's going to be an auction today. We hopefully by next week we'll know what the result of those auctions would be, and it could very well be that an extra $175 million is available from the fourth auction. That's a possibility. But once we find out what that fourth auction is, that will set the parameters of the discussion in conference. In terms of the expenditures furthering the purpose of AB 32, we're going to certainly have an open mind on these additional expenditures. We just wanted a few of these did cause some concerns. One was the river parkways for Natural Resource Agency, the mosquito vector control activities, the applied climate change research grants, as well as the adaptation funding for the Coastal Commission. We would want to make sure that those expenditures do actually result in verifiable GHG emission reductions that further the purpose of AB 32 before being part of a final package. And then, as I said, make sure that as a totality that they would meet the consistency with the SB 535 disadvantaged community requirements. Thank you.
You're welcome. Are there any comments from the dais? Mr. Williams?
This is a very important program. We need to make it succeed. I would move the May revise with the Assembly additions of $175 million, with one more addition of $10 million to expand biodiesel refining capacity.
All right. Any other comments? We should ask. Yes, Mr. Obernolte. Sorry, missed you there.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So setting aside for the moment the merits of the cap and trade proposal, Part of what you're asking us to do today is to adopt placeholder trailer bill language to implement this. And I know we've spoken about this before, but there are a number of us that feel that adopting a placeholder trailer bill is contrary to the goal of legislative transparency. And I'm just questioning why it was not possible to fill in the trailer bill language so that we could read it before we voted on it.
All right, Mr. Griffiths.
Christian Griffith with the Assembly Budget Committee. The placeholder trailer bill that is contained in the recommendation refers to some of the categorical items added by the Assembly in the package and the potentially needing to have some kind of programmatic structure statutorily in order for the funding to be able to be received by the various departments. And so it's really a mechanism to essentially ensure that any money that was allocated for those particular categories went to the departments and was properly also referring back to the requirements of AB 32 so that the funds would have to demonstrate a greenhouse gas reduction nexus that as articulated by Mr. Olney from Finance.
All right, I followed about half of what you said, but can you just explain why it's not possible to fill in, since we know the details of what the proposal is, to fill in the trailer bill before it comes to the Budget Subcommittee?
Thank you, sir. I think the challenge is that using cap and trade funding is very complicated because it does require adoption of guidelines and some kind of nexus to ensure that the funding is used appropriately for a purpose that would reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And so, if any of these departments that would get any of this money we'd need to write something that would be modeled after what we already have in trailer bill from last year's package, that would essentially refer back to the existing guidelines we have and make these departments go through a process to make sure that any money that they put out on the street would be subject to the greenhouse gas requirements. So essentially, the placeholder trailer bill language is looked at as a shell. So, for example, the Greenway Development and Natural Resources Agency would be something to say they would have to confer with the Air Resources Board. They'd have to go through the same process that we've had to do for the State Transit Agency and with Caltrans this year for the two programs that we started up in last year's budget. So it's essentially that's the framework of the bill. But because we only got this proposal a week ago, or a little bit over a week ago, we were trying to sort of build up these frameworks, and I think one of the things that will happen here is that it's expected that this entire package goes to the conference committee. It will be very different from what we expect the Senate will adopt, and there'll be a lot of discussion. So really trying to spend time creating that framework at this point is a little bit premature because some of these elements may not be in that final package.
Okay. Thank you for the explanation. I understand more now, but I think my point still remains, which is that since we have done this before and we know what the parameters are, it would not have been that difficult or time-consuming to be able to take the framework that exists, plug these numbers into them, and actually have language in the trailer bill. So let's take this discussion offline, and I'm interested in learning more about the process. But that's something that I really would like to see us do in the future.
Great. I think we should allow public comment on this, but before we do that, Mr. Gordon has his hand up. Please.
Yeah, I could do this before or after. One thing I want to discuss for just a minute is the reserve in the cap and trade as proposed by the governor. And candidly, I'm a fan of reserves. I like savings accounts, and so if you can put some money aside, if you can, I think that's a good thing. What concerns me about the way this is structured, however, is that we agreed a year ago in initially establishing the cap and trade program that 60% of the funds would be continually appropriated, and 40% would be available for the legislature at our discretion to annually allocate in reviewing the governor's proposal and our own desires. The reserve, 100%, comes out of our 40%. And I think that in terms of equity in the future, we need to find a way to make sure that as we build a reserve in cap and trade, that those items that are continuously appropriated also share in helping us to build the reserve. And I know that we're not going to be able to do that this year, I don't believe, but I would hope that as Department of Finance and the Governor's Office thinks about how we do this in the future, that we would look at equity in the building of the reserve and have 100% of the reserve come out of 100% of the funds. Thank you.
Mr. Gordon, you raise an interesting issue, so let me make inquiry of Mr. Almy on something that is related. Last year, we spent $680 million of cap and trade, or 684.
I believe it was more in the 860 range. The 680 is the drought package. So yeah, it's okay. Yeah, there's a lot of numbers floating around.
But
I certainly understand Mr. Gordon's perspective.
I don't think you know what my question is.
Oh, I'm sorry. Please go ahead.
Understanding that number from last year, none of that was requested nor allocated to a reserve. None of the cap and trade funds in last year's budget that I recall.
There was a reserve. It wasn't in the $500 million range. That is true. The way that I would characterize the $500 million reserve is, you might recall that the May revision in budget year assumes a $2 billion revenue number, but the May revision expenditure package is $2.2 billion. That is to say, we're spending over $200 million more than what the revenue is.
But
so
you're in this budget year. I mean, you're in the
next budget year.
The next budget year
in 15-16.
Can you go back before and
right?
I want to focus in on where we were last year with respect to reserve, and I think where you might be going with this is that there was more either anticipated or actually received than we allocated.
That's exactly right.
How much more?
The May revision, the May revision proposal this year assumes $1.3 billion in revenues.
For fiscal 20,
for 14-15.
14-15. Okay.
For the current year.
What was
Last
the number again?
year, $1.3 billion. Last year's budget, I believe, assumed revenues of $500 million in 14-15.
And then allocated 870.
That's right, because there was a rollover of revenues from previous years. So I think this conversation is going in the right direction, which is to say that the way to think about the $500 million reserve is that it's really a carryover of additional revenues in the current year, 14-15, which was not subject to the continuous appropriation. That is to say, the 60% framework essentially starts in 15-16. And so 100% of the reserve actually comes from 100% of the revenues in the current year, is how I would characterize it.
Fair enough. My recollection from last year is that there was, and Lord knows my recollection might be off, but I don't recall having any conversation at all about reserve amounts. We spent, we didn't spend, but we didn't talk specifically about reserve. This year, I think quite appropriately, we are talking reserve. So my question is, it seems to me this is something that we should be calculating as a factor of what comes in. So are we just going to arbitrarily determine from year to year what the reserve amount is going to be, or can we use some metrics to determine so that there's predictability? And that's a conversation that you then can have with the committee.
Absolutely. I would be all in favor going forward of coming up with predictability. I think the issue with the predictability is as we get more auctions under our belt, we'll have a larger sample of which to then assume what the revenues would be, have a little bit more of a confidence level of what the revenues are. I think the challenge that we have this year is the fact that, at least at this point in time, we only have one auction, the February auction, that includes transportation fuels. And given the uncertainty and the small sample size, that we thought a $500 million reserve was fiscally prudent at this point. But I don't think that means that going forward, if we have a more confidence level of what the revenues and the auction proceeds would be with more auctions, that we can't come to a different conclusion.
My own sense is that while the auction proceeds may become more predictable, they're not going to become predictable. I mean, it
point.
just,
Yeah.
I think
Sure.
it seems to be something that is probably going to go up and down with time.
Sure.
If we understand that, why would we not look at a reserve that is a factor of whatever amount is received in any given year? That would lend to more predictability for everyone. And I mean, I guess I'd like to hear the argument why that wouldn't be a best practice anyway, since you're then setting aside a certain amount of each auction, and it would rise and fall. The reserve would rise and fall with the proceeds that are actually received. So I'm just making up a number here. 20% of every auction is set aside for reserves, and you know what you have left. And I think that gets to Mr. Gordon's issue, which is, frankly, the lion's share of the reserve is coming out of a very small, now a very diminished pot of non-continuously funded resources.
So the challenge there is that if you basically then say only 80%, if you're saying then 80% of what is collected then can be spent, and then 60% is continuously appropriated, then you're essentially saying, well, then only the remaining 20% can be appropriated in the Budget Act, and in that particular case, you don't know what that 20% is. And so it gets to the same challenge that that a reserve is essentially a function of not only just the revenues, but what is appropriated in the Budget Act for departments to spend.
Well, I think this is a discussion that can and should continue.
Sure, absolutely.
This is the first opportunity, really, like this week, that we've had to discuss the concept of reserve. It's not an inconsequential factor for us to be considering, and it's certainly not an inconsequential amount of money. It's $500 million that we're setting aside. So I just want to put a marker down that this is a conversation that we ought to have, and the legislature ought to be working with the administration to determine just what the practice is that we're going to adopt. Now we're going to hear from the public, I think, unless someone else. Please.